You know, at Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI garbage. And what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Daniel Pierce, and I'm going to be your narrator. Now, let's get into today's story. The dust tasted of concrete, pulverized plaster, and the acrid memory of vaporized steel. Sergeant Casey Yaskova let the flavor coat her tongue, a communion with the dead city of Eggenberg. The taste grounded her. Motion was death. From her nest on the 82nd floor of a ruined library, she watched the spire. The structure was a splinter of ravaged metal and fused plasteel punching through the ochre sky of Kalamos. Kilometers high, the structure once served as the city's heart. Now, it was the city's tombstone. And somewhere inside that tombstone, something watched her back. She knew the weight of her Commonwealth M99 stanchion. It stuck cool and solid against her cheek. Through the optics, the world became a grid of measured distances. The wind moaned through the building's shattered framework, a 3-kilometer-per-hour variable from the northwest. The air was bone dry, her scope's ballistic computer already factored in the planet's heavier gravity. She accounted for all data points. Measure the wind, measure the drop, measure the variables you could quantify. The rest were lethal.
Anything, Kaltoon?
Voice crackled in her ear, tinny and distant. Casey stayed motionless, her gaze fixed on the spire.
Negative, sir. The ghost is staying quiet.
Only something real punches holes through armored personnel carriers from 3 clicks out, Sergeant. Maintain your focus.
Yes, sir,
she breathed. The words a whisper. She called everyone sir or ma'am. The formality kept a distance, a clean line between her and the universe. The sine wave tattoo on her wrist inside, a perfect calibration tone, was a quiet reminder of that principle. Purity of signal. She scanned the spire for the 500th time. The structure was a chaotic mess of twisted girders, hanging debris, and dark windows like empty graves. The ruins' chaos was the problem. The Aulic, the tripodal aliens who had put them in this grinder, were all about logic. They abhorred chaos. They built in clean lines and worked from verifiable data. The Aulic sniper in that spire worked with geometry. Every kill shot over the past 3 weeks proved it. Perfect arts with undeniable math. The sniper was the reason the Commonwealth's push to take the spire stalled in blood. It locked down 3 sectors of the city by itself. Command, in its infinite wisdom, sent Cassia to unlock it. One sniper against another. A duel of champions, they'd called it. She called it being tossed into a gravity well with a sun chained to her ankle. She scanned again, relaxing her focus just enough to catch movement. A flicker of wrongness. Her first instructor taught her the trick. Stop looking for something, just look. Let your visual cortex do the work. Trust the ancient parts of your brain. They're built for this. And then she saw it. A tiny, unnaturally uniform point of light that appeared for a microsecond and then vanished. Her training flagged it. A random flicker from sun on glass was chaotic. This was directed, ordered, wrong. She launched herself sideways in a desperate rolling dive. The air tore apart.
Hey. Sorry to interrupt your story and fall out of wherever I fell out of. But, I just want to say really quick that I really do like this story, and I would love it even more. Hey, I know you. Yeah, you've been here before. Well, anyway, thanks for coming in again. But I would love it even more if you like this story and let them know about it. Because every time a video gets a like, a squirrel gets its nuts. Okay, I gotta go. Bye.
The sound followed the impact by a fraction of a second. A hypervelocity slug, smaller than her thumb but carrying enough kinetic energy to liquefy steel, slammed into the concrete pillar she leaned against. The pillar detonated. A cloud of gray dust and stinging concrete shards filled her nest. Chunks of concrete hammered her back and legs, their impacts dull, heavy thuds against her body armor. She slammed onto her side, the impact punching the air from her lungs and leaving a burning vacuum. The M99 scraped against the floor, the sound making her wince. She lay there, gasping, her pulse thudding against her jaw as dust settled over her in a fine gray powder.
Yaskova, report. I have a spike on your vitals at a kinetic energy reading consistent with a massive gun.
The voice in her ear belonged to Dr. Kenji Orso. He was her designated overwatch, a xenobiologist analyzing the Aulic sniper from a command post 5 miles back. He was also, in Casey's opinion, a professional pain in the ass. She coughed, spitting dust.
I'm fine, sir. Just redecorating.
She pushed herself up, crawling back from the edge of her side. She checked her rifle, a deep scratch on the barrel, but the optics were intact. Good. She felt the sting on her cheek, touched it, and saw a smear of blood on her glove. A flying piece of concrete had tagged her.
The shot's trajectory, it struck the exact spot your head occupied. The deviation was 0.
Orso said, his voice unnervingly steady, showing the detached interest of a scientist observing a phenomenon. A slight tremor broke through on his last word.
You moved.
Sharp analysis, sir.
Casey muttered, scanning her nest ruin. The pillar was a ragged stump. The slug had passed clean through a foot of reinforced concrete and kept going.
What did you see?
Orso asked, his tone shifting, becoming more focused.
My senses couldn't pinpoint the shot's origin.
A glint, she said, her voice low. She settled into a new position where the wreckage cast the floor in darkness. It just felt wrong. Orso was silent for a moment, the sound of wind and Casey's breathing filling the calm. Then he spoke, his words coming faster, edged with a terrible energy.
A glint, of course. A polarized light filter adjusting. The sniper's seeing beyond thermal ultraviolet, Casey. It's seeing the very polarization of light. It would have seen the heat from your body, even through the concrete. A faint bloom, maybe, but clear as day to it. The glint was its ocular lens adjusting to get a better read on you. It saw you through a solid wall.
The realization hit her cold and solid. This was a confrontation with a higher order of predator. She was fumbling in the dark while her opponent saw every atom in the room. Then why miss? She asked in the dusty silence.
Because he chose to.
Orso murmured.
This miss was a declaration. The sniper was telling you, I see you. Hiding is impossible. This is my territory. That was an act of absolute arrogant dominance.
Casey stared out at the spire, at the silent, patient enemy hidden somewhere in its steel bones. The duel had begun, and she had just learned she had brought a sidearm to a fusion lance fight. Tesseron processed the engagement data, all variables performed within expected parameters. The target's biometrics, relayed from remote sensors scattered like dropped ball bearings across the sector, registered a predictable spike in heart rate and adrenaline. The human had moved. It had survived the initial assertion. This was acceptable. The methodology was sound. His perch was a node of calm logic within the spire's chaotic structure. He was nestled in a junction of 3 massive support beams shielded by layers of composite armor plating his drones installed. His tripodal body was anchored to the deck, limbs of unpolished iron fused to a biological core. A quiet hum from his central gyroscope negated the planet's subtle vibrations and the wind's whisper. His vision was a constant, flowing stream of information. He perceived light far beyond the clumsy, narrow band of human vision. He perceived the thermal radiation bleeding from the ruins, the sharp, energetic glare of ultraviolet light from the sky, the subtle twist of polarized light bouncing off every surface. To him, The world was a dataset rendered in his mind with high fidelity. The human, in its nest of rubble, was a faint but undeniable thermal bloom, a cluster of data points that read, living, breathing, warm-blooded threat. Griv's query arrived as a structured pressure in his mind, a televocal transmission.
Status. The target remains active. Explain the deviation for the predicted outcome.
The query was inefficient. Tesseron processed it as a function of command hierarchy and formulated a response.
The initial shot performed as designed,
He transmitted back.
Dominance has been established. The target's operational parameters are now restricted. The target understands the futility of overt action. The hunt will now proceed to its logical conclusion.
He reviewed the data from the human's position again. The rubble field, the shattering buildings, the field was a chaotic ruin. The chaos was an insult to the principles of engineering and warfare. He even registered the target's faint olfactory signature on the wind, a complex cocktail of carbon, salt, and proteins. But he filed the signature as low-priority data at this range. Humans seemed to thrive in such environments, their movements often erratic. They were a species born of chaos, and they carried it with them like a disease.
The ascendancy requires the spire, Tesseron, and a swift conclusion.
Griv pressed.
Your methodology is sound, but the timeline must be accelerated. Conclude this with absolute certainty. A confirmed kill, verified by a full data capture of the target's termination.
Certainty is the foundation of my process,
Tesseron replied.
The model predicts neutralization of the target within the next 2 duty shifts, well before the Terminator pass. I have reduced its options to 0.
He focused his phase ocular on the human's nest again. The thermal bloom had vanished, moved deep into the building's core. The human was learning. It was adapting. This, too, was within acceptable parameters. A clever query validated the process. The final dataset would be more complete. Casey had struck the rubble beside her, the impact jarring her arm to the shoulder. A puff of dust was the only result.
A sniper sees my heat, my breath, the static on my damn scope, she hissed into her calm. How do you fight something that sees everything?
That's the wrong way to fight it.
Orsa replied.
It will always see you, so you must become illegible. You have to corrupt the data stream.
Casey stopped, the tension draining from her fist.
Corrupt the stream? Sir, this is a gunfight.
Is it?
Orso countered.
From his perspective, it's a data processing problem. He's hunting for a clear signal in a noisy environment. You are the signal, so let's give it more signals than it can handle.
His words came in faster now, overlaid with the rapid clicking of keystrokes.
I'm pulling up the Orlick xenophysiology reports from the Valey's campaign. The report, mostly fragmented autopsy data and battlefield analysis, shows a pattern. Their entire philosophy, military and cultural, prizes verifiable data. Sensory certainty is paramount.
Certainty? Casey repeated, thinking of the uniform glint. The sniper has to know for sure.
Precisely. They treat ambiguity as a cognitive failure, almost a moral one. Now, you said you spotted him because the glint felt wrong. That's your brain's predictive processor at work. Millions of years of evolution have turned it into the most sophisticated pattern recognition engine in the known galaxy. Your mind bypassed calculation. You knew it because the glint was a single anomalous data point in a sea of chaotic natural reflections. The Orlick brain functions differently. It collects, it verifies, it concludes. It bypasses guesses or hunches entirely.
So, what's the plan, Doc? Casey asked. Am I supposed to bore it to death with bad data?
We will use pareidolia as a weapon.
Orso said.
What now?
Pareidolia. The tendency to perceive a specific, often meaningful image in a random or ambiguous visual pattern. Seeing a face in the clouds, a man in the moon, your brain is desperate to find patterns, especially patterns that look like a human predator or prey. We'll give the Orlick's analytical brain a whole field of meaningless patterns to chew on.
Decoys.
Better than decoys. decoys. We'll use the small heat-emitting emitters from your survival kit. They're designed to attract rescue drones. We'll repurpose them to create dozens of faint, human-shaped thermal signatures. We'll turn that entire rubble field in front of you into a crowd of ghosts.
Solid plan, sir. One problem, Casey said, peering over the edge of her ruined cover. The open ground between her building and the spire was a 300-meter kill zone. If I get them out there, well, I'm pinned down by a rifle that could core a mountain.
Check your kit,
Orso said.
Pouch C7, the Hush Prowler drone.
Casey unsealed the pouch on her web gear. Inside was a dense, fist-sized device that looked like a metallic beetle. The drone was a short-range reconnaissance unit designed for stealth.
Its shell is coated in a thermoelectric material that can cool to match the ambient temperature.
Orso explained.
Its signature, while visible to him, should be low enough to register as a low-priority event. It'll look like a piece of debris skittering in the wind, or maybe a local scavenger creature. He'll log it, but he might not flag it as hostile.
Casey powered the drone on. It unfolded 6 small, articulated legs and gave a soft electronic chirp. She connected it to her wrist-mounted command pad. "All right," she breathed. "Let's make some ghost." From the library's dark, dusty core, she found a shattered ventilation shaft that led outside, 2 floors below her nest. The shaft was a tight squeeze, but it kept her out of the spire's line of sight. She loaded the small thermal emitters onto the drone's magnetic harness. With a few commands, she sent the Hush Prowler scurrying out of the shaft. It moved like an insect, darting from one piece of cover to the next. On her screen, she watched his camera feed, a low-angle, jittery view of the rubble field. She directed it in a chaotic, looping path, stopping at random intervals to deposit an emitter in the shadow of a concrete slab or inside a burned-out vehicle chassis. Each emitter, once active, would output the faint, fluctuating thermal signature of a resting human body. An hour bled into 2. Finally, she placed the last emitter. Casey had guided the drone back into the vent shaft and powered it down. "They're all set, sir," she whispered into the comm.
Good.
Orso replied. "Now we wait. Let's see how a creature of pure logic handles a dose of pure, weaponized nonsense." Tesseron registered the new signature with his phase ocular. A faint thermal bloom, inconsistent at the edge of the kill zone. His processors logged the signature, assigned it a low probability threat value, and moved on. Then a second appeared, and a third. 15 of them appeared within minutes. They appeared at random. Some flickered, their heat signatures unstable. Others were static. Each one deviated from the consistent output of a human's metabolic processes. His logic processors flagged them as all decoys, crude, obvious, an insult to the elegant science of warfare. He filtered the noise, instructing his systems to ignore any signature deviating from the known parameters of a human target. But the patterns were too chaotic. The human had placed them in illogical locations. He had scattered them like seeds thrown to the wind. One was on top of a car, another was halfway up a wall. This moved beyond misdirection into vandalism. The display was a corruption of the data field, a childish scrawl across a masterpiece. His processor, seeking certainty, flagged every single thermal source with a confidence value below the threshold required for engagement. He could fire only with absolute verification. The ambiguity was anathema.
Status update.
Griff's thought interrupted his analysis. It was sharper this time. "The human is deploying crude misdirection tactics," Tesseron reported. "It is attempting to cloud the sensory field with thermal decoys."
Resolve it.
Griff commanded, the thought a command stripped of all context.
The ascendancy pays you to resolve local theatrics and remain focused.
Resolve it. The command was simple. The execution was complex. To resolve the situation, he needed to identify the true target among the false positives. He needed more data. He shifted his ocular sensitivity, cycling through different spectral filters, trying to find some other signifier. A CO2 trace, a subtle electronic field that would betray the living human. He dedicated all processing power to parsing the nonsensical data. He was so focused that he overlooked the new, minute detail in the human's original nest. the subtlest of changes in the polarized light reflecting off the corner of a shattered window frame. The crack of a rifle shot reached him in a fraction of a second after the impact. A human-made kinetic slug slammed into his perch. The slug spalled against the armor, but struck a peripheral sensor node on his perch with enough force to shatter its casing and send a stream of garbled sensor readings through his system. Crack-thump! Tesseron's gyroscopic core whined as he compensated for the vibration. He processed the event. The shot originated from the human's nest and struck the peripheral sensor node directly. While he was distracted by the ghost, the real human watched him. She had seen him. She had targeted a critical system. His logic processors returned a paradox. The inferior creature, the source of chaotic data, had just executed a maneuver of cold logical accuracy. His primary threat model generated a critical error. Hit, Cassia breathed, pulling her rifle back into cover. Her heart thudded, a frantic drum against her ribs. I got a piece of it. A sensor of some kind on the right side of its hide.
I saw it.
Orson's voice came back.
The decoys worked. Its attention was so fixed on making sense of the noise that it left itself open. Cassia, this is incredible.
Glad I could contribute to your research paper, sir, she said. The rush of the hit vanished as a low thump-thump-thump echoed from the spire, followed by a series of bright, recursive flashes across the rubble field. Small, concussive charges. Cassia watched through her scope as concussive charges kicked dust and debris into the air. When the dust settled, half of her thermal emitters were gone, shattered or buried. He's adapting, she said, her voice flat. He's stopped trying to find me in the noise. He's deleting the noise itself.
So the decoy strategy has a limited shelf life,
Orso said.
He's still predictable, though. He responded to a data problem with a brute force data erasure solution. He's angry. We can use that.
Cassia watched the spire. The Aulic was a creature of logic and prediction. It tried to kill her by calculating where she would be. Maybe that was the key. Doc, she said slowly, when it shot at me the first time, you said it targeted where my head was. But when I dodged, the shot landed where I had been.
Correct,
Orso confirmed.
Its targeting system would have calculated your position of velocity, then extrapolated your most likely future position. It fired at where you would be.
Like leading a bird, Cassia murmured.
Precisely. That's the same principle our own brains use. A slight delay, a few dozen milliseconds, exists between light hitting your retina and your brain processing it into an image. In that time, the world has moved. To compensate, your brain constantly generates a predictive model of the future. When you swing a bat to hit a fastball, you're swinging it where your brain predicts it will be in a few hundred milliseconds. You live in the past, but you act in the future.
A thrill shot through Cassia. This was a hunt she could win. And its targeting system does the same thing, just with a fixed algorithm.
Exactly.
Orso said.
The Olix system is perfect, logical. It will analyze your movement, establish a pattern, and target the next logical point in that pattern.
A slow, grim smile touched her lips. So, she said, her voice dropping, I just have to shatter the pattern. I have to be noise.
You have to be random,
Orso corrected, his voice tight with excitement.
You have to introduce so much noise into your movements that its predictive algorithm finds only chaos. You have to turn your own brain's predictive model against it.
She checked her rifle's charge, her smile fixed. She would expose herself, baiting the most lethal sniper she had ever encountered. It meant wagering her life on the chaotic messiness of human instinct against the cold logic of a machine. The duel entered a new phase. Cassia chose a new firing position, a collapsed section of flooring 50 meters to the left of her original nest. The path to it was a treacherous jumble of rebar and shattered concrete with intermittent patches of cover. The path was a death trap. Perfect. I'm moving, she told Orso, her voice flat. She took a deep breath, picturing the path in her mind. Then she cleared her head, letting go of planning, of rhythm, of reason. She broke cover. 3 quick steps, a sprinter's dash. She felt the alien gaze lock onto her. She could feel it in run calculations, plot the trajectory. She fought the urge to keep running for the next piece of cover. She stopped, dead. For 1.2 seconds, she stood motionless in the open. The world narrowed to the space she occupied. Then she moved again. 2 sliding steps to the right, a lurching, awkward movement. She dove behind a slab of tilted wall, the motion jerky and unnatural. Crack! The Aulic shot tore through the air, hitting the spot she would have occupied if she had continued her initial sprint. Empty space filled for a microsecond with a cone of supersonic destruction. A miss. Tesseron watched the data replay. The targeting solution had failed, a logic error flagged in his processor. The human's movement was flawed. It was arrhythmic. Her velocity and trajectory kept shifting. His targeting system had predicted a smooth, continuous path to the next logical point of cover. Her sudden halt had disrupted the algorithm, creating a fatal targeting error. He recalibrated, factoring in the new data. The human was employing erraticism as a defensive measure. Acknowledged. He would expand the predictive model to account for a wider range of probable actions. He watched, his ocular lens gathering every scrap of information as she broke cover again. Casey moved, a short scramble forward, then a pause for 0.8 seconds, a sideways roll, another pause, this one for 1.5 seconds. She moved like a glitch in the system, a thing of twitches and spasms. She was living static, and her movement was overloading Aulic's logical engine. Each time she paused, the air seemed to hum with potential energy just before the crack of the shot. And each time, the shot went wide, striking where a logical creature should have been. Tesseron fired again, another miss. The data was pure noise. Her movements defied prediction. They were simply wrong. It was like trying to predict the path of a single particle in a quantum field. The act of observation changed the outcome. His processors cycled through targeting solutions, each one failing. A feedback loop to build, a useless expenditure of energy. From her new position, she had a clean line of sight. The Aulic, confident in its superior senses, had grown overconfident in its perch's physical armor. Its focus was entirely on her, the mobile target. It had forgotten about her rifle. In the split second after its last missed shot, as its system was recalculating the impossible data of her movement, she raised the M99. Instinct bypassed aiming at the computer, aligning the crosshairs where she knew the enemy was, the rifle's ballistics a part of her. She squeezed the trigger. She felt the rifle buck against her shoulder. She saw the tracer round, a faint streak of light, cross the distance instantly. And she saw it hit. The slug struck the delicate housing of his face ocular, bypassing the thick armor. The impact was a flash of shattered optics and vaporized metal. For Tesseron, the world broke. The impact sent a jolt of biofeedback through his neuralink, a flood sensory of gibberish that overwhelmed him. His vision shattered into a million sharp-edged pieces. He was blind, lost in a storm of meaningless light. The blow was as much psychological as it was physical. Tesseron fought to regain control. He forced his systems to reboot, the purge, the corrupted data feeds. Slowly, his vision returned, but it was wrong. A hairline fracture, a spiderweb of broken light, now marred his phase ocular's upper left quadrant. It was a permanent flaw, a visual artifact that resisted all attempts at purging. It created phantom motions in his periphery, tiny flickers of light and shadow that his brain struggled to filter out.
Report.
Griff's transmission cut through the system reboot. The request was a blade.
You suffered a direct hit. Explain the model's failure. Explain your failure.
Tesseron reran the engagement data. The human's movements still defied his models. They were more than random. They were an active countermeasure to predictive analysis. It was a strategy born of a mindset that eluded his comprehension.
Human is erratic.
He transmitted, the thought stream fractured, its usual placid smoothness gone.
Its behavior defies predator and prey models. It acts like random data.
A long, cold pause followed.
You have until the next Terminator pass, Tesseron.
Griff's voice was a blade of solidifying cryofluid.
Neutralize the target by then. of your command and order the sector leveled by orbital bombardment. The Ascendancy will have the Spire, with or without your methodological indulgences. Your failure will be noted. It invites questions about your combat methodology. The Ascendancy must project absolute certainty.
The transmission ended. Orbital bombardment was more than a weapon. It was an admission of strategic failure. It was a crude, brutal instrument used when the elegant warfare of a warrior like himself had failed. It would mean Griv's disgrace. It would mean his own. The doubt in Tesseron's processor recategorized as a primary objective. This was a crusade. The human had insulted his senses, his logic, his very being. She had broken his ocular. He would kill her. But first, he would understand her. He would dissect her chaotic soul, find the equation that governed her madness, and then he would erase her from existence. He devoted all his processing power to the single, all-consuming problem of the human. Protocol caution, methodology, they were secondary now. Solving the infuriating, chaotic puzzle became his only function. The jaundiced sun of Calamos descended, washing the shattered cityscape in shades of orange and violet. The temperature plummeted. A thin layer of frost formed on the exposed metal of Casia's rifle.
Night's falling, Casia.
Orso's voice was a quiet presence in her ear.
The temperature's about to drop below the freezing point of carbon dioxide. Long-range thermal tracking would degrade sharply. The background would be too cold and too noisy.
Good news for me, Casia murmured, rubbing her gloved hands together for warmth.
And for him,
Orso countered.
He'll have to rely on more active senses, which means you'll have a harder time pinpointing his location. He knows you're hurt. He knows you're tired. He'll press his advantage. It's time to change the terms of engagement.
Casia knew he was right. The Aulic had compromised her nest. It knew her general location. Staying here meant certain death. I'm going down, she said, into the subgrid.
The maintenance tunnels and subway system.
Orso mused.
Yes, close quarters. The terrain negates his long-range advantage. He'll have to come in after you.
He'll follow, Casia said with certainty. You said it yourself, Doc. I've introduced ambiguity into his perfect little world. His kind abhors ambiguity. He has to restore certainty. He has to see my corpse with his own cracked eye. She packed her gear, moving with an economy born of exhaustion. She slung her rifle over her shoulder and secured her pack. At the building's edge, a service elevator shaft gaped open, a straight drop into the city's dark foundations. She anchored her rappel line and prepared for the descent. Also, she said, her voice quiet, thanks for the pareidolia.
My theories are bloodless, Sergeant,
he replied.
You're the one proving them with blood. Once you're down there, things will get primal. Kill your lights, kill your comms, except for emergencies. The darkness is your advantage now. Give your eyes time to adjust, a long time. Trust them. They've been hunting in the dark for 100,000 years.
Got it, sir, she said. Caltone out. She clipped into the line, took one last look at the dying light, and stepped off the edge into the darkness below. The darkness in the subgrid was absolute, absorbing light and deadening sound. When her boots touched the dusty subway tunnel floor, the ensuing silence was profound. She unclipped from the line and stood motionless, resting her hand on the cool metal of her rifle. The sensory void was disorienting, a deep-seated fear surfaced, something her training had suppressed but never extinguished. Trust them. Orso's words echoed in her mind. She found a recessed alcove in the tunnel wall, settled into a cross-legged position, and closed her eyes. Closing her eyes in total blackness felt redundant, but it was part of the process. She slowed her breathing. She listened to her own heart's drumming, gradually slowed to a steady, patient rhythm. She waited. For the first 10 minutes, only the black void behind her eyelids and the pulse of her own blood in her ears existed. Starved of stimulus, her brain generated its own. Phosphenes, bursts of colored light, danced in her vision. Faint, ghostly images flickered at the edges of her perception. Her mind worked to fill the void. She ignored them. After 20 minutes, something changed. The absolute black softened, transforming from a flat, featureless wall into a space with depth. She opened her eyes. She could see. A ghostly, monochromatic world emerged. Faint, ambient light, perhaps from a single crack in the ceiling, miles away, filtered down through the city's bones, providing just enough photons for her eyes to work their magic. Her pupils were wide, gathering every available photon. The rhodopsin in her retinal rods, the chemical key to night vision, had been fully replenished. She could see the curve of the tunnel wall, the dark shapes of debris on the tracks, the glint of a discarded bottle 50 meters away. She waited another 10 minutes, letting her senses expand into the space around her. She could hear the drip of water somewhere far down the tunnel, the faint skittering of some subterranean creature. She could feel the subtle shifts in air pressure as currents moved through the labyrinthine system. Then she heard a new sound, the faint, rhythmic scrape of something hard and fibrous on concrete. It was deliberate, measured, unnatural. He was here. She peered down the long, dark tunnel. A moment later, she saw the source. A faint, sweeping beam of light. A multi-spectrum sensor sweep painted the walls in frequencies she couldn't see, but whose edges registered as a subtle shimmer in the air. The Aulic was blind down here. It was relying on its technology to see, to paint a wireframe world in its mind. She smiled, a predator's grimace in the dark. She would show it what real sight looked like. Tesseron moved through the subgrid, his path a series of straight lines and calculated angles. His active sensors painted a three-dimensional map of the tunnels in his mind, a world of clean geometry and precise distances. He registered the composition of the walls, the air's density, the exact location of every piece of debris. He perceived only the information his sensors provided. The fracture in his ocular lens created constant ghosting artifacts, more pronounced in the dark, triggered by the reflections of his own sensor sweeps. Phantoms danced at his vision's edge, forcing him to constantly re-verify the emptiness of the spaces around him. The re-verification was an infuriating expenditure of processing power. He found her trail, a discarded ration wrapper still emanating a faint thermal signature, the scuff of a boot in the thick dust, its tread pattern matching Commonwealth issue. The data was clear. She was nearby. And yet, his sensors showed only empty tunnels ahead. She was a void in his data, an error in his machine. He swept his sensor beam across the darkness again, pushing its gain to the maximum. The beam illuminated only dust motes in the crumbling concrete walls. A sound. A single pebble fell from the ceiling behind him, clattering on the tracks. He spun around, his weapon raised, the sensor beam cutting a sharp line through the darkness. The tunnel was empty, just the sound's echo fading into silence. It was a trick, a crude, childish trick. She was using the tunnel's acoustics to harass him, to distract him, to map his position by his reactions. His logical processors, already strained by the flawed visual data and the absent target, stalled. Conflicting inputs caught him. The data from his sensors said the tunnel was empty. The data from his acoustic sensors said an object had just fallen behind him. The tactical models suggested an enemy was baiting him. A high-frequency vibration shuddered through his central gyroscope core. His own system flagged the tremor. Stress response. Cassia had herded him for half an hour, using sound and shadow to guide him through the labyrinth. A thrown rock here, a kicked can there. Each time, He would react with a sweep of his sensors, revealing his position and his growing agitation. She was mapping him, learning his rhythms, just as he had learned hers. She reached her destination, a large subway junction where 4 tunnels converged. In the cavernous space's center was a collapsed platform. It was the perfect ambush site. She crouched in the shadows and activated her comm using a low-power, short-burst laser that was all but undetectable. A thin beam of light shot down the tunnel and connected with a relay drone miles away. "Orso, you there?" she whispered. His voice came back, a faint crackle of compressed data.
"I'm here, Casey. I've been tracking your movements, and his search pattern is becoming erratic. You're getting to him."
"I'm in position. It's time to end this. What's the final move, Doc? You've been quiet for a while. I assume that means you found something."
"I have,"
Orso said, and she could hear the strain in his voice. He was running on stimulants and sheer will, just like her. He sent a data packet to her wrist-mounted display. A grainy, incomplete anatomical diagram of an aulic head appeared. The diagram was clearly pieced together from multiple sources.
"This is the fragmented autopsy report from the Deadliest campaign,"
he explained.
"Theories pieced together from scans of a blasted corpse. But the lead xenobiologist on that team proposed a controversial hypothesis."
He highlighted a spot in the diagram where a thick bundle of nerves exited the back of the massive ocular lens.
"Like us, they have an optic nerve, a point where the nerve bundle passes through the retina, a natural blind spot."
Casey stared at the image. Every eye has one.
"Yes, but our brains are masters at hiding it from us. We have 2 eyes, which helps us, but even with one eye closed, your brain fills in the gap. It takes the information from the surrounding area and seamlessly patches over the hole in your vision. It creates a complete picture for you."
He took a breath.
The Aulic brain probably does the same, but it's a brain that trusts its senses implicitly. It will see an empty wall because it expects to see an empty wall. It will render a complete, flawless picture, even if a part of that picture is a complete fabrication.
The key clicked into place for Casey. This was it. "You think?" she asked, a hint of challenge in her voice.
"The data's sparse,"
Orso admitted.
"It's a high probability hypothesis."
"Close enough," Casey muttered. She scanned the junction. Her eyes, now perfectly attuned to the gloom, found the spot. A recessed maintenance alcove deep in the shadows of the far wall. It was perfect. "Give me the angle, Doc," she said, "from his likely point of entry." Orso fed the calculations. The exact angle, the precise distance. "If he enters from the north tunnel and scans the room left to right," he said, "and if my hypothesis holds, that alcove should fall within his ocular's blind spot as he approaches the center of the junction. He'll walk right past me," she breathed. "His brain will show him an unbroken wall," Orso confirmed. "You will be a ghost in his reality. You have to be a statue, cold, silent, and electronically inert." Casey powered down everything but her suit's minimal life support. She slid into the alcove, pressing her back against the cold, damp concrete. She became a void, waiting for the monster to walk past. Tesseract entered the junction, his sensor sweep painting the vast cavernous space in his mind. 4 tunnels converging, a collapsed platform in the center, debris scattered across the floor. He analyzed the room's geometry, calculating sight lines, potential ambush points. He swept his sensors from left to right. The left wall was a mess of exposed conduits and crumbling brick. The far wall was a long, continuous stretch of smooth concrete, broken only by the eastern tunnel's dark mouth. He trusted the data. He trusted his brain to render a complete, uninterrupted picture from the torrent of sensory information. He stepped into the junction's center, his tripodal legs moving with renewed confidence. The human was absent. His model suggested she would be in one of the adjoining tunnels, preparing another childish acoustic trick. He would proceed to the eastern tunnel, and he registered an anomaly. The anomaly was a scent, the faint alien biological odor of a human. Sweat, respiration, the unique olfactory signature of an off-world species. His analytical mind registered the input, a piece of sensory data that was in direct conflict with his visual information. The data conflict, the paradox between what he smelled and what he saw, resolved a fraction of a second too slowly. His combat protocols flagged a critical contradiction and forced him to turn his head toward the sense source, toward the smooth, unbroken wall. For a microsecond, the blind spot shifted, the illusion collapsed, the smooth wall fractured, and he saw her. A silent, still shape in an alcove that his mind had erased a moment ago. A human, rifle ready, raised and settled, its barrel's dark aperture pointed directly at his head. His targeting system returned a paradoxical error. Threat detected. Target is located in a non-existent space. Recalculating. A muzzle flash was the last data point it processed. Dr. Kenji Orso stared at his monitors, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. Casia's calm was silent. Her biometric feed was dead. She'd powered it down, and all he had was a seismic sensor that had registered the faint thump of her rifle firing. A single energetic burst. Then, only the echo remained. He held his breath, counting the seconds. Had she done it? Or had the Oleg finally resolved its paradox and put a slug through her head? The quiet lengthened, becoming an unreadable, crushing weight. He was a man of data, of verifiable facts, and he had sent a soldier into an ambush site based on a hypothesis, a ghost story pieced together from a dead man's notes. His screen flickered a new signal. Low power, short burst, encrypted. Casia's voice, ragged and quiet, filled the small command post. It was a sound of profound relief.
Caltown, target neutralized. The spire is ours.
Orso leaned back in his chair, the air he had been holding hissing out between his teeth. He closed his eyes, the tension bled out of him, leaving him hollow. He wanted to cheer, he wanted to weep. Instead, he just keyed his own mic, his voice thick with relief and something more. Copy that, Caltoon. Solid copy. Extraction is on its way. Later, after the first response team had secured the spire and confirmed the kill, Orso sat alone, recording a log entry for the Xenobiology War College. The final image from Casia's scope feed was frozen on his main screen. The dead Oleg. Its single eye a shattered ruin, its iron fiber body slumped in the eternal twilight of the subgrid. He cleared his voice and spoke, his voice low and weighted with the gravity of what he had witnessed. Log entry, Xenobiology War College, file reference 8 Alpha Calamos. The Agenberg Spire engagement has concluded. Commonwealth Sergeant Kasia Yaskova neutralized the elite Oleg marksman designated Tesseron. Victory came from exploiting the fundamental philosophical differences in our species' approach to sensory input. He paused, choosing his words with care. The Oleg treats sight as a tool for analysis, for the collection of verifiable absolute data. For them, the universe is an equation to be solved. This reveals a fundamental miscalculation. They see for measurement, we see for survival. Our eyes and the brains that power them were forged in the chaotic, blood-soaked savannas of old Earth, hunting prey that was faster than us and hiding from predators that were stronger. Our vision is a messy, predictive, profoundly flawed system, full of blind spots and cognitive shortcuts. It lies to us constantly, and in those lies, in that constant, desperate attempt to predict the future from an incomplete picture, lies its lethal genius. He looked at the image of the dead alien, a testament to pure logic's limitations in a chaotic universe. Looking back at our evolutionary history and our bloody-minded lethality of our predatory ancestors, the conclusion is inescapable. Human vision was built for one purpose. Death. Casey sat on the ramp of the evac shuttle, her helmet off, letting the wind whip through her sweat-matted hair. Below her, the ruined city of Agenberg receded, a gray and brown scar on Kalamos' surface. The planet's sun, a brilliant white star, was climbing into a pale blue-tinted sky. The adrenaline had faded, leaving an ache in her muscles and a quiet hum behind her eyes. She had won. The spire was theirs. The grunts could move in. The war would continue. She gazed up into the vast bright sky and she saw the floaters. Tiny darting motes of translucent light, squiggly lines and faint shadowy circles that drifted across her field of vision. An entropic phenomenon. The shadows of red blood cells, proteins, and other debris cast upon her own retina. This was seeing the machinery of her own eye at work. Flaws in the system, noise in the data. For a moment, she thought of Tesseron. He would have seen these imperfections as a flaw to be corrected, a signal to be filtered out. He saw the universe as a clean data set. He died because he rejected any data that contradicted his model. Casey watched the tiny ghost dance in her vision. She saw the imperfect, chaotic, beautiful reality rendered by the flawed, predictive marvel between her ears. She saw her own blood flowing in her eyes, and like every human who had ever lived, she chose to ignore it. The noise was part of the picture. You learned to look past it. She closed her eyes, turning her face to the sun. She felt its warmth on her skin, a simple, clean sensation in a universe of endless complexity. And for a moment, she let her brain rest.